Dearest gentle readers, watchers, and subscribers, welcome back. Bridgerton season 3 has just dropped, and boy oh boy do I have opinions. But while I was enjoying the show very, very much, I had a random thought that popped into my head. A conspiracy theory, if you will. What if Lady Featherington this whole time has been purposely sabotaging Penelope so that she would never get married and eventually become a spinster? What if she's doing all of this on purpose? But then I thought, no, Deborah, this is way too far. I mean, sure, Lady Featherington is not necessarily a great person and she's quite ignorant and somewhat annoying, but surely she wouldn't sabotage her own flesh and blood. Right? Well, I decided to search it up, and apparently I'm not the only one who's had this thought. When I went through the Bridgerton subreddit, I realized somebody else had thought of this as well. In fact, they had a theory that Lady Featherington purposely dressed her daughters terribly to keep the attention on herself, which was interesting. While I partly do see where that person is coming from, I specifically want to focus on Penelope. I think that Lady Featherington purposely or unconsciously tried to sabotage Penelope Featherington. And here are my reasons why. Let's get into it. But first, if you don't know who I am, hi, my name is Deborah, student, singer, songwriter, and everything else in between. Welcome back to my channel where I talk about my favorite TV shows and movies and books. And today, we're going deep down the rabbit hole. Let's get into it. The first form of sabotage is by making Penelope wear colors such as yellow and orange that do not flatter her. It's not just that yellow is a happy color. The problem is that Lady Featherington's own wardrobe and her two eldest daughters extends to more than just yellow and orange. Yes, she wears a lot of yellows and greens, but she also wears a lot of purples, which is an expensive color back in those times. In fact, one of my favorite looks of hers is this purple and gold embellished dress. It's much more brighter than the rest of the ton, or what you would find in the House of Bridgerton, who prefer more pastel and light colors, but that also shows their certain level of class. For them, their wealth is understated, whereas in the Featherington home, they want their wealth to be overstated. But you see, I always thought maybe this is just her style, this overcompensation for the fact that maybe she's not as welcome in the ton, and since she's such an ambitious mama, she's just trying to do everything she possibly can to make sure her daughters are seen. And I can agree that she extends this grace to her first oldest daughters, but not to Penelope. I don't know if you've noticed, but in every single scene that Penelope is in with her family or even without her family, Penelope is always in two signature colors, yellow and pink. It's no secret that these are not her most flattering colors. Penelope has red hair. Pink, a lot of the times in the shades that she wears it, clashes with her skin tone and her hair. But why is that? Why is Penelope always in yellow? At first I thought maybe each sister was designated a specific color, but then when you realize it, both her elder sisters are able to change color garments throughout the whole entire show, and yet Penelope is always in yellow and pink. So I did some digging. You see, the reason that Penelope is forced to wear yellow, because it's not her choice, is because the simple reason that her mother says that yellow is a happy color. She says that in the books. And that seems like a very dull and normal reason. And I thought, okay, maybe there's not much behind that. Maybe that just shows that she really likes yellow. I mean, she herself has worn occasional yellow outfits before, even though it makes her look like some old lady's grandma's wallpaper, but that's besides the point. Penelope was always forced to be in certain colors that were off-putting for her skin. And even if they ran out of money, why is it that Penelope was always designated yellow? Why couldn't she wear blue or lilac or any other color like her other sisters were allowed? This didn't become as painfully clear to me as when Miss Thompson arrived in their household. Because you see, by that extension, Miss Thompson should also be designated a specific color throughout her season. And yet she was allowed to wear different variations of colors, but never Penelope. Miss Thompson, even though she was not necessarily a Featherington, she was in fact allowed to wear colors that suited her skin tone better. Lighter colors, lighter pinks, even a sort of light silver, but never Penelope. It is as if all the three women in the household had better prospects and their colors were just seemingly more important than Penelope's. It always seemed that all these women had agency over the certain colors that fit them, but never Penelope's. And since Penelope never had the choice to choose her outfit, then surely this is not her fault, but the fault of her mother's. You see this even when she's visibly disappointed when they receive new dresses. In the first season, when Madame Delacroix comes with new colors and with new dresses, all the other girls are given perfectly good options for them. Well, I'd argue that the shade of orange is not a great shade for her skin tone, but I digress. And Penelope is stuck with yellow. and you can see her visible disappointment. This is why I call it sabotage. See, even if she is ignorant to a certain degree, despite that ignorance, it still shows me that she's painfully unaware of what actually looks good on her daughter, but also that she does not care to find out what really looks good on her daughter. And she spends the rest of her time investing in her two eldest daughters. And in the book, this is pretty much confirmed. Even in early chapters of the book, when they're both sitting down and Penelope has already been out in the season, it's been around 10 years if I'm not mistaken, she actually tells Penelope that she's happy that she's not married because, well, now she has someone to take care of her and be her practical slave. And Penelope shudders at this idea because she knows that being with her mother, well, she's not really treated as a human being by her mother. She would just be treated as a second maid. Season 3, while it doesn't necessarily follow the 10-year time jump that it does in the books, they do definitely highlight this in the first 4 episodes. It's also mentioned by Lady Featherington within the first episode, and it becomes painfully clear that Lady Featherington, for the most part, doesn't really care about Penelope. And to me personally, any parent that goes out of their way to ignore their child's needs and wants and puts their needs before their own child's definitely has sabotaged them in one shape or another. It sabotaged her ability to make relationships and be secure in herself and in her beauty, in her ability to form healthy attachments to other people. It sabotaged her in so many ways. But also, the fact that it makes her mother a little bit happy that she has someone to do everything for her, to be her second maid, it kind of makes sense why someone would willingly go out of their way to make sure that there wasn't as many possibilities for that person to leave the nest in the first place. Do you see the point I'm making here? Reason number 2. Penelope's mother does not actively help her to catch men. See, Penelope's mother does not actively help her to catch any good match as so far as we've seen. Penelope, for 10 whole years, never quote-unquote received any prospects, which for me is hard to believe, but one of the reasons that ladies in the Ton have prospects in the first place is because their mamas are always involved. Their mamas are always trying to pawn them off to the right person, telling them of the right type of men maybe that they should go for, or try to catch their eye. I mean, we see this with Lady Violet Bridgerton all the time. When she's working with Daphne, she lets Eloise know about her season, giving her advice and tips and telling her what to find in a specific man and what not to do and what to do. And yet we never see this advice given to Penelope by her mother. She just throws her out into the season and hopes that she'll float and survive, and focuses on her eldest daughters who have found matches. And yet she doesn't really extend any words of wisdom to Penelope to help her or to help her understand what kind of relationship she wants or what kind of match that she should look for. Reason number 3, Lady Featherington always looks better than her daughters. What's something that is painfully different from Lady Featherington and the other mamas in the Ton and also her daughters are her dresses. Because if you notice, Lady Featherington's dresses are always cinched in by the waist. Her corset always looks different, even from the other mamas in the Ton. Now, I originally thought perhaps this is because she's older and she's not necessarily trying to find a match, so therefore she's allowed to show a bit more of her curves and cinch in her waist more than the other ladies are allowed. But by that theory, shouldn't Violet and Lady Danbury and everyone else be able to cinch in the waist like she does? Lady Featherington not only shows her best proportions when she dresses, making sure that her waist and her great features are accentuated, but she also dresses in the best possible colors that she can afford. Not always. Some outfits truly do clash with one another, but I can't help but pull up that purple and gold mix, or her greens, or specific shades that actually highlight her tones. From this, we can sort of conclude that perhaps Lady Featherington also does this to attract attention to herself, whereas the other mamas focus on attracting attention to their daughter. Lady Violet Bridgerton and the other mamas make sure that their daughters look amazing. Even Kate and Edwina's mother makes sure that her daughters are in the best garment colors, different from hers. Her look is always naturally more plain. She wears simple light colors and light pinks, so does Lady Violet Bridgerton. The only person who really indulges in darker colors is Lady Danbury, and that is because, well, she's a widow and she's allowed to do anything that she wants. But outside of that, have you noticed the other mamas in the background don't really do the same? And they always make sure that their daughters look better than they do. Yet with Lady Featherington, it doesn't really work that way. Sure, her daughters look good for what they can in those outfits, but I noticed that she always does pull attention towards herself, whether she likes to admit it or not. Her style of dress is more attention forward. And you also see it in their body language, how Lady Featherington always walks ahead of her daughters. Meanwhile, the other mamas in the Ton walk behind their daughters, pushing their daughters to the front to be seen because they know that that is what they're looking for, a new prospect, a new husband. But Lady Featherington never does that. She always walks in front of her daughters and is the most eye-catching thing, and then her daughters come behind her. These are small noticeable details, and this is a more subjective argument, but I do bring it up to show the differences in how she behaves for the rest of the mothers in the town. Now, this is not me saying that because a mother dresses to accentuate her curves, that she is a bad mother or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying at all. And I'm also not trying to say that older women should hide themselves more. That's not what I'm trying to insinuate. It wouldn't be a problem if Lady Featherington actually accentuates her curves. I actually really like it. It does suit her figure. The problem is that when she does that and leaves her own flesh and blood in the dust and not caring what Penelope looks like, instead of her to give wisdom and advice to Penelope on how to accentuate her curves and how she naturally looks, and give the same style advice to the rest of her daughters as to how to dress for their size, she doesn't do that. She just gives her daughters what she thinks is good, and then she moves on, not really taking the time or taking the space to look and be attentive to her own children. Now, you may be thinking, why would she possibly want to do this? Yes, she never considered Penelope as a good enough catch like her eldest two daughters. I think it's also because she knows that Penelope is her smartest daughter. Let me explain. You see, in the first episode of season 1, she specifically says something to Penelope that I thought was very interesting. Penelope talks about that being her first season out as a debutante, and Penelope, while she has a book, her mother tells her to stop reading so that her thoughts wouldn't be confused, which is interesting. And I know this wasn't completely uncommon at the time, because a lot of people truly did believe that women were not supposed to read so many books. It would just be simply too much for them. So that also is partly a product of the times. This is also something that Violet Bridgerton does, in which when Eloise pursues more academic interests, she doesn't say the same things, but she would like her to also focus on catching a man. But I also think that Lady Featherington knows that her daughter is more intelligent. In fact, that she's more intelligent than her eldest two daughters. And as a result, because she's more intelligent, she will eventually have less control over her. Penelope has her own frame of mind, she has her own will, and even though she is more subdued to her mother at the beginning, I think her mother secretly knows deep down that Penelope is way more smarter than she lets on. I think she underestimates Penelope, but deep down, I feel like she knows that her daughter is way smarter, just like her. One of the reasons I use this as evidence is because of something that Lady Featherington says herself. You see, when her brother-in-law comes back after her husband dies and tries to claim the estate, she obviously tries to look for a way to seduce the man. And she says, I'm paraphrasing here, but she basically asks, who can we use that is dull enough, but is pretty enough to be able to seduce this man and ensure that we can still have power over her, ensure that we can still be able to stay in this house. Meaning that basically whoever they're looking for would still be dull enough to let them stay there and not overtake her or overpower her and her plans and her wits. And who did she choose? One of her eldest daughters. She didn't even consider Penelope as a viable option. Simply because A, Penelope knew it was weird, B, Penelope was completely against it, and C, she knew that if she ever put Penelope up to this task, it would have never worked as easily. So she knows that her eldest two daughters are not equally as smart as Penelope. She never chose Penelope as the dull option to begin with. She chose one of her eldest daughters, meaning that she knows that her eldest daughters are the easiest to placate and control, and they'll do whatever she says. And so, as a result, with these three reasons, unintentionally or intentionally, Lady Featherington did definitely sabotage Penelope's prospects towards marriage. And at the end of the day, she would have been perfectly fine with Penelope being unmarried for her own selfish reasons. And that is my conspiracy theory. But I don't know. Y'all tell me down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I will see you guys in the next one. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Okay, bye.